Hello everybody and welcome back to Big Dan's channel. I am, of course, as always, Big Dan, and today I'm going to be reviewing Companion. Now, I will admit, when I first heard about this film and the original concept for it and all that, I was actually quite skeptical of it because, to be honest, I could have thought it was just going to be basically popcorn fodder, to be honest. Like, I've not watched this film before, but I know Megan, which came out 2 years ago now, I want to say, that was kind of like, I've not watched it, but again, I thought it was going to be something like that, and I was always skeptical of it, and I just didn't really have the biggest hope in it, to be honest. But to be honest, it did actually quite surprise us, and I did have a really good time watching this. Part of this is because of the fact that simply it has quite a few decent ideas it creates that actually prevent this from happening, such as discussing like a man who's lonely, but he's quite wealthy and he's meant to be the antagonist sort of thing. And just all sorts of different ideas around AI and things like that. And this is obviously being potentially maybe a thing that could end up happening in the future, regardless if we want it to or not. Like, I don't know, it just seems a bit too kind of realistic at this point, to be honest. Like, I don't know, it does genuinely seem like something that could happen. And I think that's kind of what the film's trying to get at a little bit. I will also say Jack Quaid is the villain, because I know that's not obviously the role he usually plays, well, except in obviously the Hunger Games, if you didn't know that, because I do sometimes forget he's in that film, to be honest. But yeah, I do quite like him in this. He is relatively good as a villain, it's just there is some stuff about him that doesn't seem too villainous, shall we say. Like, it could just be because of his other roles, such as obviously Huey in The Boys, and, well, just anything else he's been in, really, because he usually plays the protagonist rather than any kind of villainous persona. Like, I don't know, it just felt a little bit off to see him as, like, the villain this time round. But again, that could just be because of his casting in other films. It's not really anything against this film's writing or anything like that. Though I will say, as far as villainy is concerned, he's not, like, one of the most defining villains I've ever seen, though he does still do relatively good. Like, don't get us wrong in any aspect like that of anything, please. I do have to say, though, there are some minor plot holes within the film. I can't really think of any in particular, and I don't really want to go into them here. But yeah, there's nothing big particularly, but there is some little like instances here and there, maybe 3 or 4 throughout the film where I was kind of like, am I just being stupid, or is that already being explained, kind of thing. That I will say, in its defense, it does actually do quite well at covering most of these plot holes that could have existed otherwise, sort of thing. Because there was instances where I was like, oh, how does that happen? And then the film was, you know, smart enough and it was well written enough to then cover sort of how this thing kind of happened, if that makes sense. So I did like at least that they weren't just like, you know, because that could have brought me score down. I do also have to say the film is very well paced. Like, I know obviously it's an hour and a half, so it's going to be naturally shorter and more likely to be better paced than films I've seen previously, or just, well, longer films in general. But to be honest, like, it is really well paced. Like, in comparison to, for example, Trap, which I watched last year, that was, well, we know about the pacing of that. The last act of that thing drags on for way too long and it's awfully paced at the end. Whereas this thing, while it does still fall into the trap I have of modern films for quite a bit, of just really slowing down in the last act, no matter how, like, the first 2 or however many have gone, for the most part, this film is very well paced. Like, I remember just checking my watch at one point, not because I was bored or anything like that, but just because I was curious, like, how far actually are we in this? And we're in like half an hour or something like that, and it felt like maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So it just goes like really, really quick when it comes to the sort of just pacing of it overall, and it doesn't feel like a drag at really any point except that last act, as I said. But even then, it's still not too bad, and I have seen worse, more drawn out ones. It's just kind of a bit of a problem with modern films that I'm noticing in that respect. But I mean, that's a topic for a different time. Like, another example that's been helped is the instance, the opening incident, or the inciting incident, I mean, that happens within the film is really early on. Like, it's maybe 10-15 minutes in, something like that, so it barely takes any running time whatsoever, and it is really shocking because it's not like revealed in any trailer or anything like that. It is just completely left sort of to figure out during the film, if that makes sense. So I can at least see on the marketing side of things as well, they've done really well in that respect and hiding it a bit. Though obviously there is some dialogue that's, you know, given away within the trailer, such as obviously the, what was it, the 2 happiest days of my life were the day I met Josh and the day I killed him. Like, that is, you know, that happens basically in the opening of the film, and as soon as that happened, I was kind of like, yeah, I already know about this, you gave it away, guys, like, you don't need to act like it's some big revelation or anything like that. But that's just a little bit of a nitpick for me, to be honest. I will say about the film as well, the kills when it comes to the film, because obviously this is a horror, while they're relatively unoriginal, I'd say, like, there is some that are a bit just, there's some that I'm kind of like, this is not really anything new or anything like that. It's kind of also the case where, like, for all unoriginal, they are still fairly graphic, and I don't think surprising is the word, but shocking for a few of them, if that makes sense. Like, for the most part, I'd say they're unoriginal and just not the greatest, we'll say. They are all relatively well executed, I'd say. There's none just, like, done for shock value, I'd say, or anything like that. And they do put, obviously, as I said, like, good effort into sort of the gore effects and everything like that, so I can give them props in that respect. I will, however, have to say that Josh's nickname for Iris in this beep boop, as he keeps calling that, he uses it way too much, and literally every single time I heard it, I was cringing. Like, I get what they were trying to go for with the villainy side of things, as I mentioned earlier in the review, but it just didn't work, and it was just, as I say, really cringe. And it was one of the, like, worst parts of the film for me. Like, every time he said it, I just went like, ugh. You know what, maybe it would have worked a bit more effectively if they used it like once or twice during the film, but it gets used like 7 or 8 times, particularly in the last act as far as I remember, and it just didn't really work in the film's favour, and it was just, yeah, it just really didn't work for me. I will say, however, that I do actually like about this film, when it comes to balancing the humour and the seriousness side of stuff, this is again a thing that I like more about modern films actually, I'd say, though there have been instances recently, like, what was it, A Real Pain, that I watched for the first film of the year, where they do actually quite, like, balance it well. It never really feels like there's constant tone shifts or anything like that, and I do think it is a nice thing that modern films are actually doing better than the past, if I'm going to be completely honest, and to give them credit at the same time. But yeah, I do actually quite like it, and there is some decent humour here, as I said. Obviously, Jack Quaid being in this, you know, you're naturally going to bring about a bit more humour sort of thing. I thought he was just really fun, and this was honestly a really fun time. Like, I'm sorry if this is a bit of an abrupt end to it, but yeah, I just really liked watching this. So for all the reasons I've mentioned, being obviously the originality side of stuff, I do actually like how original this is in bringing in some new ideas and not just being popcorn fodder. And all the other stuff like the gore, yeah, there's a bit of cringe and there is a few minor plot holes. And I do like the gore, as I said, even if it is maybe a little bit unoriginal in its kills. My final verdict for Companion is an 8 out of 10. That's honestly about the average for this film as far as I'm aware. Like, I know a lot of people have given it high ratings like that, and it has to be my favourite film of the year so far, obviously based on the other reviews and ratings if you've seen them. Some people might disagree with that, to be honest, which is completely fine. But in my opinion, I don't know, I just found this really fun. Like, again, I liked that this, yeah, kind of fell into the popcorn fodder territory as I always expected it to, but wasn't just that kind of thing. Like, it actually had some good points, and it wasn't just some, it did kind of make you think, if that makes sense, rather than just being sort of mindless action, which, again, there's nothing wrong with. I'm just saying, like, you know, it's not that mindless action films generally aren't going to get a massive way up my rating system. But right now, I'd say, as I said, this is probably my favourite film so far this year. I just thought it was really fun, and I always like seeing Jack Quaid. I just think he's a fun actor I see these days, and even Sophie Thatcher as well. I just think they're both great actors in their own respect. And I've been following Jack Quaid on Instagram, and I've seen like how successful and how much he's enjoyed watching this film see success, and it's honestly really nice to see. So yeah, I'd say this is one to go watch. As I said, it's my favourite of the year so far, though to be honest, I do think The Brutalist might, well, what do I even mean might? The Brutalist is pretty much certainly going to be above this when I do finally get around to watching it at the cinema. That will be another review, of course, as well. But even so, I can't see this honestly being like one of my favourite films for this year that I can see myself rewatching in the future, like maybe in the late 2020s and stuff like that. But yeah, I found this to be a really fun film. That's about all I've got to say about it, though. I hope this has helped you guys in deciding whether you want to go and see the film. I, as I say, recommend that you do go and see it. I thought it was a really fun time, especially for a January release. There's another not so fun January release in the form of Flight Risk that I'm going to see Wednesday, so that's not going to be the most fun. But yeah, that's probably going to end up dead last on my list. So prepare to see a probably negative review from me on that one. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys for watching. As always, I've been Big Dan, and I'm out. Peace.